right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. We got rained out today at Hamilton Golf and Country Club. We'll be there tomorrow. We'll be there the rest of the week. It's actually beautiful now. We got the sun out. The course is hopefully going to dry out. The boys are flying up. It's go time this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a big hockey game tonight. What an afternoon we have.
Yes.
What an afternoon.
You think the course will dry out properly for those fellas? I hope it will.
I hope so.
Because we've had it in the past. I think we got rained out there. Was it last year or the year before at St. G's? It was just Monday, Tuesday was brutal. Mm-hmm. And we didn't go. And that place dried up and it was perfect out there. Hopefully the same thing happens.
I hope so, because I went to my son's soccer game over the weekend. Like, it was the field was gross and disgusting.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll be wearing rubber boots if not. Like, I'm not wearing a nice pair of sneaks and you trudge to the booth and they get all. No, it'll be rubber boots. You know my rubber boots. Yeah. I wore them on the panel with you guys, Hazy, your first night hosting.
That's right. I snapped a pic. They're very effective. Very effective.
Anything, cut the grass, do gardening, anything.
That's a commitment, man. Like if you're lawn guy, like my neighbor across the street,
dude, they're popping out everywhere. Like lawn people are popping out.
Their lawn is immaculate, like immaculate. Like
dude, I know you said they resawed every year,
but it's beyond that. It's a perfect grow out. It's a perfect cut. And I'm not sure when he gets out there to cut it. I don't see him often, but I caught him the other day. He had the knee-high boots. He had the goggles on. Like this is
goggles
a science.
For cutting.
It's a science.
The grass doesn't go in his eyes, right?
So it doesn't go in his eyes. I think he's down there on all fours, making sure everything's all good. Like this guy, I'm surprised Augusta National doesn't have a scouting staff up here, like someone up in the tree being like, that's
I want a pick.
We could use
Get
that.
a pick for tomorrow.
I will. I'll get you a pick. The most immaculate grass in the world. And my grass is pretty good. It's pretty good. And it is great when someone gives you the, hey, grass looks good on the walk by. Very, very gratifying comment. But compared to this guy, I'm in the East Coast League. Not even. Wow. I'm playing men's night.
I just can't care enough. Like my brother, we have a group chat with about 4 of us. Whenever he cuts his lawn, he snaps a pic and tosses it through and says, better than ever. And it's like
lawn porn.
Lawn porn.
Hashtag lawn porn. And we're all just like, it's cool, but I don't know if it's worthy. But it's something that he takes a lot of pride in. I just do it as one of those necessary, like you got to cut the grass, you cut the grass. Yeah. But other than that, I'm not ever taking a pic of my grass and showing it to anyone. I don't care that much about it.
I care enough about my lawn. I'm not going to get them in trouble. I have a lawn service, and it hasn't been very good. To the point where I had to send a video in on Friday. Actually, I'm sorry.
Video
what was it? Yesterday.
Video
so it was
review.
it was a video on Sunday because they cut it Friday night, and it looks like it's a jungle again. And I'm like, are you using a blade or are you just driving a mower over top of it? Like, it's ridiculous. My neighbor was immaculate, and then I look like I'm a jungle. And boy, they're good at billing. I'll tell you, you get a text from them, and hey, we're putting this on the credit card. We're doing this. They're unbelievable billing. But you know where they're not good at is cutting the lawn on time and cutting the lawn, short enough that it looks like it's been cut. So I'm not complainer guy, but I sent a tail of the tape. I went through the video
and
sent it to and just said, listen, like, you guys can do better. I expect more. And
you're like a GM in the playoffs. You're like calling the commissioner.
Complaining to the ref.
Yeah, you're like, hey, I don't think we're getting the right cuts over here.
Yeah.
We're not getting the right cuts. The other guy's getting better cuts. Flag on the play. I love it, Noodles.
It was, you know what, and I don't like that. Like, I was going to switch companies this year, and they fought for my business. And it's been a slow start. We'll say they only got 3 shots on goal in the first period. So let's see if they dig in like Dallas did in the second period.
I like it. Let's hope their managers and John Schneider, who's going back to the hey, it's only May stuff.
Oh,
right, John Schneider just wants everyone to know you play a lot of games for a reason. In case you weren't aware of this, they play 162 games.
That game yesterday, we should do a segment sometime down the line saying, what did you yell at the TV? Because I yelled 3 different things. I said, for about 2 hours, I was like, you guys suck. And then I yelled at the TV, "You guys got some jam. You got back into this thing." And then at the end I said, "You guys just suck. You suck even worse than I thought you sucked at the beginning."
Yes.
They're just a bad team. I'm sorry. Like, I think it's at the point you can come to the conclusion
Yeah.
they're just no good, man.
They're not any good. And
No.
this is where the reverse psychology, we all looked at it, right, as we were looking down on the White Sox, the Tigers, soon to be the Pirates.
That's how you describe this upcoming part of the schedule.
Gotta have it. Guess what they are? They're 3-4. They're 3-4, and so that means the Tigers were like, thankfully the Jays are coming to town because we can save our season.
Hazy, you know what I said to myself yesterday? I'm like, why don't you look around the league and see if there's a junk team with some good players you could pluck off of it and make us shake up a little bit? And then I thought to myself, other teams are probably saying that about the Jays.
Yeah,
Go sniff around and get Bo Bichette or Vladdy or Springer or somebody. They're the team that I was thinking of, a team that's not that good with some good players.
Right.
They're the team.
That's what's scary. I mean, they're in Chicago today. Chicago's a different level of horrendous. You know, like there are a few teams that are notably worse, but not many. You know, you're 6 games under 500. You've played 50 games now. Like, that's a large chunk of the season. You're almost a third of the way through the year. This is who you are. You're just not that good. They finally scored 11 runs, which is a ton of runs, but first time they've done that all year. And what happens? Garcia's a gas can in the 8th, and Romano gets popped. And Swanson and Romano, like, that's your 1-2. They got injured in camp. I don't know if they rushed back or what, but they have been borderline unpitchable. Like, Swanson's been a disaster, and Romano's blown a lot of saves. And, you know, last night was not that necessarily, but it was a scenario where he came in, you got to get him out of the 9th. You got to get to extra innings. You got to give your team a chance to survive. And we know what happens. So everything's kind of going against them right now. We'll track what's going on today. More on the Jays later this afternoon. Keegan Matheson will join us. But, yeah, that is the perception. That is the reality, is that they're just not that good. And the other teams are like, this is a chance for us to feel good. Bring the Blue Jays through town because they're a slump buster. That's what you are. When you're not a good team in pro sports, you're a slump buster.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of what they represented to Detroit after they won the first game of the series, notably big. Bats came alive, arms were solid, and then it completely fell apart over the weekend.
They're the team, Hayes, where if the opposition's broadcast is describing their schedule, where they're like, it gets tough here, and then if they use the phrase, it eases up right here, where Toronto comes into like that's what they are right now.
That's what they are.
They're being used as as a description of it eases up on the schedule right here when Toronto comes to town. That's pretty sad.
There is one positive because Vladdy, did I read that he's got the most hits? Now, Vladdy in May has the most hits. Am I correct with that?
He's been a rock star, but is it noticeable when your team's losing as much as they are? It's not. You're not wrong. Vladdy's really starting to cook here. Like, he's starting to really get going, which is great and probably was inevitable. He's a good player. He's a really good player, but it's one of those things. Like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it really make a sound? Like, Vladdy's standing out as like a guy who's really bringing something. Jansen's brought something. But when you're losing and there's all this negativity around you and everyone's on the manager and the GM and the president, and you're 6 games under 500, it's kind of tough to find that positivity. But it is there. You're not wrong. Vladdy's been really good.
Well,
really good.
But he's been really good. But still, what is that? Like, what is his ceiling? Like, if he continued on, like, what's he on pace for? Is it 20 home runs? Like,
probably around there, which was about what he did a year ago, right? The year before, what did he have, 24?
That's what he is. Like, is that what he is, a 25 home run guy?
He's a very good player. Like, that's what he is. And that's what is kind of the issue here with the Blue Jays when you look at their lineup. Vladdy's a very good player. Bo's a very good player. They're not superstars. Right, it's not Aaron Judge, it's not Ohtani, it's not Mookie Betts, it's not Juan Soto. Like, those are Bryce Harper superstars.
Right.
They're the level below, which is very good players.
Yeah.
But if you have your best 2 players are very good players, the rest of the lineup better all be good players. Good to very good.
Yeah.
Exactly. It can't be 2 very good guys and then a bunch of guys who are killing you. And, unfortunately, that's kind of where they're at right now, and that's how they're built. Keegan Matheson later this afternoon. Again, we'll be at the RBC Canadian Open all week. Bob Weeks will join us later this afternoon. Some vids and pictures coming out. Mike Weir's arrived. Nick Taylor's arrived. Rory's going to be up here. It's going to be a fun week, so we'll continue to look ahead to that. We'll look back on what took place over the weekend. Davis Riley is in the field as well, and he just won yesterday down at Colonial.
Yeah. Are you doing 18 hole this year, or what is your Pro-Am schedule?
For the Pro-Am, I believe so. I'm not sure the whole details. Yeah, I'm not aware of all the details. That goes down tomorrow night. There's a whole draft. We'll be on the air. But, yeah, I think it's a bright and early.
Where do you think you would be on the list of, like preferential? Like, if there was bidding where I want this guy or I want that guy, like, where do you think that Hazy B would be on the list of people tossing up their hands saying, I need some Hazy B action?
Who's he
would
against,
you be like,
though?
I don't know. The thing is, there's a bunch of rich dudes, bankers. Like,
well, they want to play with pros, though, dude. They don't want to play with me. I'm an amateur. Like, I'm not up for grabs.
Like, let's say there's some people from RBC.
It's a celebrity shootout?
No, let's just say some people from RBC, they're like, you get a tour player and then the kind of celebrity person.
I see.
So you're picking Rory, and then you got to pick media types,
right?
And we're basically C-list celebrities. There's like the Brad Pitts, there's like the Charles, and then there's us. So
yeah,
where do you
further
think
down the alphabet than
D,
that?
Yeah, we're D.
we're around Q, I think.
We are.
But
no,
there's
C.
Right,
so do you think that you would be sought after, or?
I guess it would depend. Again, like Noodles said, who else is available?
Right.
But I think I would be. You know, if it's a group of OverDrive fans, then yes.
Yeah.
You know, I say that all the time. People ask, you know, people that notice us or come up and talk to us, and you know, I don't know, out of 100, let's say 95 people out of 100, no idea who I would be. You guys are different. You're pro athletes, like you played, but the 5 that do know you, they really know you.
They like you.
really, really know you. How many kids you have, where you golf, what you do with your life, what you had for dinner the other night. Like, they're involved and invested in the show, which is amazing.
Right.
If it's one of those 5, I'd be high on the list. If it's one of the other 95, I probably wouldn't come up. And I'm not sure who I would be picked by. But anyway, luckily for me, that's not the case. You know, I don't have to play the role of Phil Kessel at the original All-Star game when they did the draft. You know, I don't have to sit there and fall on the draft board, because I'm just going to play who I'm going to play with, and I'll let you guys know come Tuesday night and into Wednesday. But we got a hockey game tonight, back in Edmonton, right? Back in Edmonton. The Oilers are favored tonight. It's been low-scoring games.
Good hockey games.
Really good
games.
tight-knit, like, who's going to break. Like, I kind of feel like that continues tonight. I'm on the under. The total's 5.5. I could see it 3-2, 3-1, 2-1. I just think it's a game of not making mistakes. Right, like, it's just like we're going to volley back and forth. We're going to make the ice shrink. They're skating. They're physical. They're killing penalties. Both teams. They're not going to the power play much. I know Edmonton's kind of complaining about that, and that's the nature of the beast. And you got to play that game. But I think if you're Edmonton, you've established, and I think they would have known this in the room. But they can win this series. Like, this is a coin flip now, and you're back in Edmonton. You played really well through 2 games. You got yourself an OT winner. You got your split in Dallas. I think the Oilers should be in, a pretty positive frame of mind going into Game 3 tonight.
Man, they sure had an opportunity, though, guys, where it's like you get Dallas. Like, although the Vegas Golden Knights had them down 2 Cobb, and they still came back and they won the series. But if you can get that extra one, man, go ahead and take advantage and give yourself the best position possible. But it's that Dallas team, you got to give them credit. You got to give all these teams credit.
Good.
The way that each team fights and scratches and claws to either get a win or stay alive or hold their serve and keep the series alive. Like the New York Rangers, man, you guys were right. I'm sorry. I called 5 or less, and that was one of the few mistakes I've made on my predictions, okay? Mm-hmm. But the Dallas Stars, man, they're scrappy. Like, they lose that game, there's probably a good chance they're losing that series. You're not pulling that nonsense off twice in one playoffs. Like, you're not coming back from it, going back to Edmonton down 2 Cobb. You're not doing it again. You're not doing it twice. So they showed a lot of jam. But now Edmonton's going home, and they should be feeling confident.
You're right, but there's adjustments. Like, I thought Edmonton had a great start they outchanced them, outshot them in that first period, and then Dallas adjusted. And Dallas really, there were pockets where Edmonton couldn't get anything going. I think it was 10 minutes 2 times during the game where they didn't get a shot on goal. Now, Edmonton was right there. They generated some momentum back and forth. But it's a game of just a little air here, a little air there. Like Ryan McLeod's not playing tonight. I think it's the right call. That kid has been very shy in the playoffs, and the other night he had an opportunity to get in the lane, and he chose not to, and Suter gets that through to the front of the net, and a beautiful tip by Marchment. Like, that's a great play. Hats off to Marchment. I think he was really impactful.
I'd rather have Dennis Malgin, personally, but continue.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway.
I'm just saying, personally, I'd rather Malgin. Yeah, but please continue. But like, that type of stuff, like, it's a small margin where that's playoff hockey. That's not November on a Tuesday. And Henrique's going in, McLeod's out. Like, that's, it's a small adjustment, but it's stuff like that where it's like, you're in the third round, you got to play for keeps. And to me, you're a young guy, and, that third line has really struggled. The fourth line, like, all the lines are quite balanced, but the fourth line played very well for Edmonton the other night. I think, Dallas's team has looked really good. The kid I really like on Dallas, that Stankoven kid's a player. But he's so tiny, but he battles, he's a player.
Man.
He's
a small area guy. He makes small plays in small areas. He's figured out how to get it done, and it's nice to see what. He's got a long way to go to have a career and all that, but right now he's figured out the NHL and how he can succeed, and he's effective.
Yeah. But both these teams you look at, I thought Ottinger was really good early on. I thought Skinner's looked good. There might be a night where one of these goaltenders have an off night. There hasn't been a lack of chances. There's been a lot of scramble plays where I thought the D have really dug in and sticks on the back door and stuff like that. But there might be a night where a goaltender, stinks the joint out and one team gets the favorable, lopsided win. But right now, there's no piece of ice that's not contested in that series.
No, and that's the way it should be. And I mean, it's pretty similar in the East. It's I think Florida, most would say, myself included, they've been the better team through 3 games, but it's irrelevant. You're down 2-1.
2-1.
And, those are 2 big, tough, kind of, nasty, go-to-the-net type teams, like north-south. We heard Craig Berube last week.
Yeah,
that's the way it's got to be. It's north south. You got to skate. You got to check. You got to use your body. Get in the lanes, like that. It's all cliches, but it's there for a reason. Like the 4 teams left, they all have different characteristics, but they also have a lot of similar characteristics. Like a lot of similar characteristics in terms of the way that they're trying to approach the game. And last night, the Rangers, they end up winning in overtime, but they had a 4-2 lead at the same time. They blew a 4-2 lead. Yeah. And Florida, pushed back. I think they deserved probably a better fate. But again, we're not in a position to offer
moral
up
victories.
Yeah, there's no moral victories. You're down 2-1, and now you're in a situation where you better get game 4. Because, the Rangers, you're going back to New York. If you're down 3-1, New York's got 3 cracks at it. They've been in that position with Carolina up against the wall. Right, and they found a way to get that done, and I think it's a must-win for Florida tomorrow. I think they likely will win, but this is where it gets scary when you've got Shesterkin and a Ranger team that seems to have kind of a destiny. Like they kind of look like the '93 Habs. Like they never lose in overtime. They got a great goalie. It's like a different guy every night stepping up, and when you have that kind of mojo,
like it's the big talking point was Trouba. Like, this guy plays for keeps, man. He's going to take your head off if he gets a chance. And, he got.
I don't get this, though, Noodles. Explain to me, if you can represent the league, how it's a 2-minute penalty plus a fine.
It's almost like they looked at it after. And guys,
I know.
I had to look
possible?
at it. I had to look at it, and I at first thought that the elbow hit him like between his shoulder blades. Like you see that right there. It's almost like I think it hit him in the upper back. I don't really see any.
The one angle is pretty damning. The other angle looks like he hits him right in the side of the face, right shoulder inside of the face. But
this guy always gets away with it. I'm sorry, he always does.
Listen, I told you he
the high stick on Frederick.
Yeah, insane stuff.
It's like that's intent to injure. It is. I don't care if it's your elbow, forearm. The guy's coming across the middle. You throw your wing out at the guy's head. Yeah. This is where the league.
Yeah, I guess, Brian, you bring up a good point where it's like, regardless of where that made contact, when you fly the chicken wing out, you've got one thing in mind. It's like, I'm beat, and I want to try to inflict some pain here because I'm beat.
Right.
Well, he made
that looked like one of our boys, like Prongs would pull that move. Right, our boy Chris Pronger. That would. You think you're going to beat me? Chew on that.
Pull that move. That was a Tuesday night in February.
I know, but he got suspended a lot in his career. For that
was
move.
nine times, I think, suspended.
Right.
But listen. They looked at it, which is, I don't know if it was 5 and then called back to 2.
Well,
I can't remember how they called it.
Right, I don't see how, like watching that live, how that's not immediately 5 in a game. And borderline, you're calling security in.
I don't know if they really got him that hard. He got him, but I don't think he got him, like knocked him out. Like I
hear what you're saying. And Rodrigues, could he have been selling it to an extent? He might have been, and he returned. I hear you, but that looked violent live.
It was. It was a forearm shiver to the to the side of the head. So we'll call it forearm shiver to the head. So I don't know how it didn't get a game or whatever. But I'll tell you, this guy, like,
I hear you, Noodles.
He plays for keeps. I take him on my team every day of the week.
Everyone else would too. That's not the argument. Like I would take Brad Marchand on my team. I'd take Kadri. I'd take Sam Bennett. I'd take a lot of guys. I'd take Chris Pronger every day of the week. Pronger's got suspended 9 times. It's a different conversation. I'm not disputing how he plays, and he's big and nasty, and he got away with one here.
Yeah.
I think if you're an average fan, you're like, let me get this straight. You reviewed it and decided 2, but then fined him. The fine to me is the dumbest, most insulting maneuver the NHL's created here. It's basically them saying,
what message is it?
Nothing. There's no message. No, it's not on the books, Noodles. It doesn't.
It is, because the next time
they create the books.
You become a repeat offender.
But they're in charge of the books, Noodles. Next time they'll just say, it's not a suspension. Like that, they create the books.
I understand that, but there is a protocol. If you have been fined or
didn't he get
on
fined
the
for the Frederick high stick? I thought he did.
Yes,
I think he did.
So what book are we talking about?
I don't know if it rises to the level of, okay, if you got 2 fines, it goes to a suspension, something like that. But
but that's what I'm saying.
So are they going to make that up, or when are they going to determine
they can make up anything they want. It's their book. Yeah, we're going to write in a book here that this one's actually $5,000, and then
I think all we can do is summarize it like this: it doesn't look good on the league when it's
the captain of the Rangers getting away with it.
The 2-minute penalty, and there's the suspension with the Frederick play, and then all of a sudden, magically, he gets a fine. Or the lack of suspension on the Frederick play, fine there, and then 2 minutes here, and then a fine the next morning. It's like, what are we doing?
I think you're right. Like, what is the book? That's a great question. I don't know. But I go back to, then maybe it should be. The book is like, if you've been fined or suspended 2 times in the last 18 months, doesn't matter what happens, the level of it, you get automatic this. Like that, maybe
we don't know if that's the way they operate.
I understand that. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying.
I hear you, Noodles. The thing is, again, it comes down to their interpretation of what's worthy of it.
Right.
So it still is going to come down to human decision on.
Correct.
And what they'll do is, screw it. We don't want to suspend them, so we just won't fine them, so no one calls us on the fine stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I get it.
They could have gotten out of jail by just saying, well, our guys reviewed it. It was 2 minutes. But they decided to go with the fine thing as if it's like the 2-minute review in the NBA. It's the dumbest thing ever created. Who cares the next day that you miss stuff? What does that do for anybody? Nothing. It doesn't do anything for anybody. And listen, the Panthers have to be careful because they got a lot of nasty dudes on their team. Sam Bennett just got away with one the last round. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I understand that. And I guess what I'm saying is I'd have more respect or understanding if they just didn't acknowledge it. They said, sorry, they reviewed it and they gave it 2.
Call on the ice, that's what we're standing by. You make a good point. Like, I'm not trying to counter argue it. I'm just saying, like, I felt like when you put people on the books, it should count for something. Mm-hmm. Here it doesn't seem like what you're making the point, but it should. That's my point. Is it should? If you're on the books, $5,000 fine in February, and now another $5,000. Maybe there should be some form of doesn't matter. That means there's 2 plays that we didn't like that we fined for you. Automatic 1 game, something like that, where there is that level of consistency where you go, doesn't matter. This guy got clipped. And you're right. They might just avoid it and go, call on the ice for 2 minutes. It is a fast game. It missed his hit, all of that. And you're right. Like, both teams play with an edge to the point where you could make an argument, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, you name it on their team, that Lomberg. But in the end, Jacob Trouba that could have ended really poorly. Like, that, if he connects forearm right in the nose and knocks him out, then, it looks different. But, 2 minutes was a little bit.
I don't know. Listen, if that's the interpretation, they look at it, they think they got a shoulder, or they think Rodrigues sold it, or whatever. Okay, I would argue. I think there's intent there. I think the guy throws his arm out when he's coming across the middle, but fine. And then, but then the next day, the league looks at it and goes, "Actually, we really didn't like that, so we're going to fine that." At a minimum, what the league is admitting is it should have been a 5 last night. Like, it should have been 5 and probably a game last night, and then you return for game 4. It doesn't have to be more. It's like, that's your penalty. It was bad. You intended to do something, but instead, he only gets 2 and a fine, and he'll be back in there game 4, and that's big for the Rangers because they need him. He's a really good player. Chris Johnston is going to join us. Ray Ferraro will join us. Ray was down there last night watching that live, so we'll get Ray's take on the whole thing, his take on the Oilers game tonight. There's a picture going viral. We'll get into a picture going viral.
Come on.
Picture going
viral.
We all
saw it. We all saw it.
What are you going to do? We can't control it. We didn't take it. It's not like we sent Doogie down to a coffee shop in Etobicoke to sneak pictures,
Do you think he would have gone if you called him, Hayes, and you said, Doogie, go to this I would have told you.
Doogie would, of course, told me to take a lap, as he should have. But we'll tell you what it is. Chris Johnston coming up. His take on the World Championships. He was over there. Pretty big for Pasternak, David Kampf, Czechia. They win. Canada, not so much. Wasn't great in retrospect for the Canadians.
Which makes you wonder, so they go over there and they stink the joint out like that. They don't medal. Not stink the joint out, but they come out of it with nothing. Mm-hmm. What was the importance of it for guys to be there for the upcoming tournament? You know how that thing was, you better show up.
Right.
So you stunk the joint out. So what did it mean that you showed up?
Right. Is it a disservice in the end? Showing up, is that enough, or did you have to play well and win?
Well, yeah. What's worse, not showing up at all? Like Nick Suzuki's I wasn't a part of that garbage. Right. You might want to bring me.
You know what though? I took more, and over my career, I've heard coaches say, and it's true. There are guys from over there in Europe that play harder for their country than they do in the NHL.
Oh, yeah.
And Radko Gudas' comments saying, this is what I've dreamed about my whole career. My God, you make $5 million a year as a defenseman trying to win the Stanley Cup, and that's what you're dreaming about?
Hey, dreams do come true, Noodles. They do come true.
I'm just saying, I had one coach that would give it to guys who were going over there. Head over to the Tournament of Losers, guys. We're trying to win over here. Mm-hmm. And it would just be – and you watch those countries, they are – and they should be over the moon.
Huge.
But the point being is, shouldn't those guys – if they're in the NHL, shouldn't they be dreaming of winning the Stanley Cup? That was – I thought Gudas' comments, I kind of chuckled about them. Man.
Noodles, there's some guys that got beat out of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and if they're at home, they'll be on a private bird red-eye to get to that tournament.
Pasternak in the second round. Pasternak was in the second round. He made it.
It's a great tournament, and there's some great talent over there. That messaging gets lost in translation. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
In translation, sorry.
I see. Okay. Ray coming up. Chris Johnston coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Chris Johnston coming up. Ray Ferraro still to come. Bob Weeks, Keegan Matheson will be at the RBC Canadian Open out in Hamilton tomorrow and throughout the week. Can't wait for that. And Craig Berube was announced as the new head coach of the Maple Leafs last week. And I guess, he was in town meeting with people, and I guess he met with Mitch Marner last week. That is our understanding. It was last week. He met Mitch someplace downtown or someplace in Etobicoke. Naturally, someone snapped the pic, and the pic is going viral now. And it's a big story. Berube and Marner. There it is, meeting face-to-face. And I think, if you're Berube, this is a natural move. I mean, Mitch Marner's a Maple Leaf. He's a massive part of your team. He's got an A on his jersey. And if you're Marner, of course you accept that invitation, or you should be proactively trying to push for it. Again, you're a Maple Leaf. You're a big part of the team. You got a new coach. Got to get on the same page quick. I don't know what it means for a big picture conversation. The tinfoil hat guy in me wonders if it was all a part of the plan to make sure you're in public so someone does snap the pic. Hey, Berube and Marner, look at that. Could have met anywhere. Could have met privately. Could have met at the rink, underground, at his house. I don't know. Tinfoil hat.
So what does that say to you? What does that say to you, Brian? That they're bringing the band back and the difference is just the coach?
Possibly.
That's in your mind?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Well, we said it all along, guys. As much as I think, I'm not sure what your opinion is, there needs to be different players. Their hands are tied to a certain degree. If the players that we're all talking about that you would think to kind of switch out or to move out, they hold the cards. Mm-hmm. They could make a phone call and say, by the way, don't even approach me with that.
Right.
Their agent could call and say, don't even approach with that because it's not happening. And that ends that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, it might be just the coach, and that's what's going to happen.
Well, all right, let's bring in Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider. What do you read into Mitch Marner and Craig Berube getting together?
Well, I certainly would encourage you to take off the tinfoil hat.
Okay.
I think, put it this way in our terms. Is it better to meet someone in the office, or is it nice to go for a beer maybe after work to have a more casual conversation where...
Yeah, but CJ, this is the Maple Leafs, the head coach, and Mitch Marner. Like, you don't think someone's going to have a little peek around the corner and be like, ooh, I'm getting a pic of that?
Well, based on that picture, it looked like they were tucked in the corner pretty good of a small coffee shop. So,
all right.
I don't think they're doing that to be photographed. Unfortunately, that's...
no, I don't think they would do that either.
As we've seen, there's been a few other photos lately of Leafs management and the like when they've been out socializing. I kind of hate that about today's world, but is what it is. I think it's as simple as this. Mitch Marner is under contract to the Leafs for next season. He's obviously an important player for Craig Berube to get to know. And I don't know that anyone still yet knows exactly how this is all going to play out, where Marner will be or won't be next year. And so absent that information, I think it only makes sense that, in Craig Berube's shoes, you are setting up meetings like that. I actually had a chance to talk with John Tavares when I was over in Prague last week at the Worlds, and he mentioned that he was going to meet with Berube as soon as he got back to Toronto. So, I would imagine that these meetings are happening everywhere. Travis Green actually was over in the Czech Republic when I was there to see some of the Senators players that were playing at the World Championship after he got hired. So, I think that this is normal course business. It's just that because where we are at this point in time, the interest in the Marner story in particular, and I can understand why it blew up online today. But I don't think it actually tells us too much other than two people getting to know each other because they're going to be working together next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's got to be mandatory for Berube. Berube's not making the calls on that anyway. That's for management to figure out what they're going to do with the roster. The coach, he's got to know his players. I think and especially your leaders. John Tavares, he's your captain. Mitch Marner's got an A on his jersey. Until something changes, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Morgan Riley.
Well, let me throw something out, though, guys. If they had plans to move Marner right away, why would Berube, he would be privy to those conversations, right? Mm-hmm. Why would he meet with him? To me, it sounds like he wants to develop a relationship with everybody within the organization and with the plan moving forward. So, again, there's been... all of this stuff is on the outside of people saying, well, trade Marner for this and do it Marner. If the plan is they're just moving forward, then Berube's got to talk to his players, which includes Mitch Marner. So I think it's a moot point.
And you're also hoping that the organization upper management talked about trends, the same things happening every playoffs with the same players not doing it. Now it's on the coach to get different results from the same guys that do the same thing every year. That's what we're talking about. So. Well,
on top of all that, Jamie, if they're moving Marner, it's after July 1st because that's when he can sign an extension somewhere else, and I can't imagine they would be moving him before then. So, this is all going to take a few weeks if it even happens, and that's obviously still a major if at this point in time.
Yeah, and it might also be the Leafs saying we're only going to do it if Marner actively asks for it. You know, the way they've treated all of these players, they've treated them incredibly well. They've been remarkably supportive. And
you want to talk about gods? The organization has treated those players like gods.
Right. Blue and white disease. It's permeated the team and the organization. It was always the media and the fans that were responsible or painted with that brush. It's blue and white disease is alive and well within the team. And like I don't know if that's been addressed, CJ. If like that would be a massive change and left turn, 180. Quite frankly, forget a left turn. This is a U-turn. To just say we're going to make your life miserable to get what we want. Like there's a chance the Leafs are just going to say we're not going to do that because that's not how we practice. That's not how we operate. That's not who we are. We don't want other agents and other players to think we operate that way. So we're not going to do it. And if that's the case, and it's a giant if, this would suggest the only chance there's anything that's going to happen is if the players were the ones to proactively ask for that.
Well, I think there's an evolution happening though within the organization. I mean, if you go back to when these guys were first coming into the league, I think the Leafs felt they needed to protect them. And that's maybe where some of what you're talking about comes from, where I think the organization went out of their way not to make them uncomfortable publicly, to do what they could to deflect the media attention in whatever way they can. And, now we're not talking about young players in the league anymore. And you've got a new, person at the top, and Keith Pelly, Brad Treliving's, going to put more of his stamp on the team, and obviously Craig Berube now too. So, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that you see a different approach. I mean, that's the one thing obviously we talked about a lot since Berube's been hired, is that, in the past he's not been afraid to just tell it like it is, to be very direct with how he sees things, and that can be on the negative side of a player's game or performance as well. And so, maybe we're going to see a shift in that. It's kind of tough to say until the bullets start flying next season, but I don't think it's going to be the same Leafs organization, even if maybe they aren't able to move off one of these main players on the team.
CJ, when you're over there, you're having some stop and chats with lots of different people within organizations and throughout the league. Where do you get the sense that things are going to heat up before the draft? Obviously, teams are still playing. There's 4 teams still playing, but there's a lot of teams that aren't. Do you think there's been a lot of chatter for marketplaces and maybe potential trades here leading up to the draft so far?
Yeah, I think, because the flip side of that is 28 teams aren't playing, and some of them haven't played a game for quite some time. And so obviously those front offices are deep into meetings, not only with their amateur staffs for the draft, but also their pro scouting staffs to chart, what the off season looks like. And so I think you see some of those seeds starting to be laid down now. I mean, typically, I don't think the NHL likes too much business to be done during the Stanley Cup final. So these next, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks from this point on, we might not see a ton of things materialize, but it's going to be a pretty quick run up beyond that into the draft and free agency. And, this is a year where finally there's a little more wiggle room with the cap taking a jump up. And I think that, you're going to see some teams be pretty aggressive out there and trying to make changes. So, I'm pretty optimistic, actually. This will be a busy off season. And I do think some of the behind the scenes work is being laid, with preparation for mid to late June.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, Rangers up 2-1. You got a tie in the other series, Game 3 tonight in Edmonton. I'm not sure who you picked prior to the series, but are you still on who you picked? Have you changed your mind? What do you make of where we're at in the East and the West?
I'd had Edmonton, actually was my preseason pick, so I just had stuck with it because it hadn't made me look stupid yet other than the first month of the season. But, I think that series is going to be very close. It's I don't know that I can say with any conviction that it's going to be right. But, I was impressed with the way they were able to get the win in the first game there. And it looks like it's going to be a 1-goal series, kind of the way a lot of them are now. So, we'll see how the goaltending holds up for Skinner with the Oilers. But, I think it's been 2 entertaining series so far. And, yesterday's game was great down in Florida with all the goals and, the overtime and all the drama around that.
Yeah, it most certainly was. I mean, the Trouba stuff, we were talking about it, the whole on the books, the fine thing. Like, does that even mean anything? What does that even mean?
Tell us about that.
Yeah, when you're the author of the book and you control the book and it's your book, what is the book? What is the worthiness of the book and being on it?
Like having the $5,000 fine, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, because I think he's been fined
Noodles
before.
told us. Hang on. Noodles told us they got a book where if it's like you get 2 fines, the third time you might be gone for 15 games.
A lot of chapters.
My whole philosophy, CJ, behind it is instead of just doing nothing, but they don't like it, but they don't feel like it rises to 1 game, they'll put a guy on the books and go $5,000 fine. And Hayes brought up a good point. It's like, well, what does that mean? Because he got fined in February. So if there's 2 on the books type of thing, I always say on the books. I at least like the guy on the books. That makes him somewhat of a repeat offender. But then Hayes brought up a counterpoint going, well, he was already on the books for the Frederick thing in February. So if that's 2 on the books, does that get you 1 game? And obviously it didn't. So,
the Phil
that's
Mickelson
kind of what
lob wedge to the back of Frederick's head. Super flop shot.
Yeah.
What it does in practical terms is it does actually restart the clock on how long he is considered a repeat offender. So for 18 months from now on, if he gets suspended, it's a lot more costly than it would be if he was a first-time offender. But that's probably not going to satisfy what you're looking for. I mean, it'll not be very pleasant for him if he does take a suspension now in the next 18 months. And so obviously from February to now, he got a whole 2.5, 3 months in there of good service until getting reset. So, I mean, he already was essentially a repeat offender. Now it extends the window where he'd get docked even more money. But, I'm with you. It seems a little trivial. And I think Paul Maurice kind of took a jab at that today when he was speaking to the reporters and saying, you better take a collection up for him. He's not going to be able to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, Trouba's in a tough spot now, down $5,000. Rangers up 2-1, Game 4 tomorrow. We'll see. All right, CJ, good stuff, buddy. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
All right, enjoy the Canadian Open, boys.
You got it. Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider. Yeah, the RBC Canadian Open kicking off this week out in Hamilton. We'll be there tomorrow. We'll be there throughout the week. Can't wait. We got Ray coming up. We got Bob Weeks coming up from Hamilton later this afternoon.
By the way, around the corner, there's a course called Dundas Valley.
Oh, yeah?
If there's a couple members, about a scratch and a 10, that want some action around maybe 9-ish or something.
Okay.
Send us a note, and me and Hazy B will take you on. We'll pay for our golf, and we'll hand it to you before we get on the set.
Look at us calling our shots. It's like a wrestling bit. We're looking for someone out of the stands.
Dude, I got to prep you for the crapper match, man. We got to get involved and get engaged out there. Let's take on a couple guys we don't know and put our game face on and get ready for the show. Nothing better than walking up to that set with it being victorious in a match. Man, would we feel good.
Now, here's the thing. What if you guys soil yourself? And then
we hate each other for choking. Yeah. I know for a fact if I choked on 18 to lose us the match, this guy would never let me.
The head shaking, you'd look up. It would just be Lee Trevino and Happy Gilmore.
The other thing, too, though, is the other day you shot a ball and he didn't go. His legs were too tired. He didn't go look for it. We had to hear about that for 2 days. Mm-hmm. And he admitted, he's like, I was too tired. I'm not going to go look for your ball. So there are some things that can go south. I would love nothing better to drive up and you guys come skipping up and say, we dominated, the crapper and somebody else or whoever.
That's the pressure. We're willing to put that pressure on ourselves. We'll roll the dice and say, we'll show up on set victors.
But I also know what it can look like on the other side, too.
We're willing to take the chance.
We're willing to gamble on throwing the whole week out of whack.
Yeah, exactly.
And hating each other for 10 days straight.
Yeah, we're willing to accept that challenge.
We'll try
it for the betterment of ourselves, really, and that's about it. Everyone else will not benefit, but we'll try. All right, race coming up in about 20. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, the Jays got themselves a win today down in Chicago. It's Memorial Day in the U.S., so a lot of day ball games going on, and Jays win 5-1. So now they're 500 in the soft.
Now Schneider's happy after, and he's doing the positive. Tomorrow will be like, man, time's running out, season shrinking. It's got to be urgent.
Well, they're 4-4 now against the White Sox, the Tigers, the White Sox. So, then the thing about that time comment is there's also time for it to get exponentially worse. Yeah. That doesn't come up. He's selling it like, hey, there's time for us to play, 650 baseball. Yeah, and there's time for you to play 400 baseball.
The only thing I'm not aware of, because I don't believe Ross came out with any kind of proclamation before the season.
Good word. Very good. Strong week.
Thank you. I wanted to start the week off strong.
Great start.
I don't know what the expectations were. There was none. There was no talk about it. So I don't know if it was like, man, I don't want to say we're going to be good this year because we're probably going to be crap. So if it's just this is what they were supposed to be, and it's one of those kind of years where it's like, let it sort itself out for whatever reason, then it's like, okay, go ahead and do it. But if they had expectations where they couldn't have, because every expert said this team is just average at best, confusing their offseason moves were described as. So this is basically what they were supposed to bring to the table. So to yell and scream and get mad over it every day, I mean, you can, as a fan of baseball, be pissed at it, but this is kind of what they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point about them not being overly, like, they weren't that loud about.
No, 2 years ago there was a lot of publications that said World Series favorite Toronto Blue Jays.
And we're accepting that.
That had everybody pressure. Attached to it, and they brought that with them every time they went down to that dome. But this year it's just like, what the hell do we even have here?
No idea.
No idea.
When you sell internal improvements and then Justin Turner, Kiner Falefa, and Kevin Kiermaier returning, that's tough to really, puff your chest out. Like, let's call it what it was. It was Ohtani. Wow, we missed there. Internal improvements. 39-year-old Justin Turner, who's really struggling now. Isaiah Kiner Falefa is what he is. Utility guy, probably should be off the bench. And Kiermaier, Kevin's up there in age. He's a 9-hitter. He is what he is. And he's not hitting even like he was a year ago. So that's a problem. And it probably was expected. I just think it's worse than people thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You still thought they could get to 85 wins, maybe 87, maybe 89 again. Right now, they're on pace, like we said last week. Are they going to win 75 games? I'm not sure they will. It could get worse than that.
5 games below 500, aren't they, with today's win?
Yeah, 24 and 29. Yeah, they're way back. Way back. All right, hour 2 coming up. Ray Ferraro will join us. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.